Anuja Royal is on a day out in London with her mum.
Oh, bless.
She's a tourist in her own town. It's been a long time since she's been able to enjoy the sights. For more than a decade, it's been risky for her even to leave the house. This was Anuja just 6 months ago.
I used to be sitting on a chair and my legs used to kick up quite violently and nobody could stop it. I used to walk along a street and then suddenly just veer off into any direction.
At the age of 25, Anuja was diagnosed with epilepsy. Part of her brain was damaged, and at any moment she could have a seizure. But Anuja's case is a breakthrough. She's one of the first patients in the world to benefit from the latest brain scanning technology. Not only is Anuja now seizure-free, she's a beacon of hope for other epilepsy patients who may now be successfully treated. Doctors knew Anuja's epilepsy was rooted in a small part of the brain. The trouble was, despite trying all the usual scans and x-rays, doctors couldn't locate precisely where in her brain it was coming from.
The difficulty that we had was that the regular brain imaging, regular MRI, was normal and didn't indicate whereabouts the seizures may be arising from. We had recorded seizures with wires placed on the scalp, and again these indicated that the seizures were coming from the front half of the brain rather than the back half, and probably the right side rather than the left side, but we weren't able to pinpoint exactly where these were coming from.
Anuja's case is not unusual. Conventional imaging technology cannot pick up brain abnormalities in 1/4 of epilepsy patients who might otherwise be cured by surgery. But now a new scanner called diffusion tensor imaging, or DTI, can accurately pinpoint those previously undetectable brain abnormalities.
Ready?
Like the conventional magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI scanner, it works by detecting water in damaged cells. It doesn't just look for how much water there is in brain tissues, but how much it is moving around.
Areas of the brain that have developed abnormally or that have become damaged often have an altered amount of water within them and therefore appear different. This is a diagram of how diffusion tensor imaging works. On the left here we have an area of normal brain, and the brain cells here are tightly packed together. The spaces between the brain cells are therefore very tight, and the water molecules, represented by the red dots, are therefore very restricted in their movement. Over on the right hand side there's an area of, for example, damaged brain. Brain cells have been lost, and the spaces between the brain cells are therefore now much larger. Water can now move more freely, and it's this extra movement that's picked up by DTI.
This is the scan that changed Anuja's life. This new technology gave Anuja's doctors the missing piece in the puzzle, the location of where her abnormal brain tissue could be found.
And one can see that the front of the brain on the right-hand side, there's an area of increased water movement when compared to our group of subjects without epilepsy. And this abnormal area here, what we believe represents the cause of Anuja's seizures.
Anuja's seizures would strike without warning up to 3 times a day. She would lose control of her limbs and all awareness of where she was or what she was doing.
I often walked straight into a busy road, or I would come out of a seizure and realise that I was standing right next to cars just whizzing past me. There was a real risk I could have been killed if I was incredibly unlucky and just had a seizure at a time where somebody had been driving along and just not being able to stop.
But before taking the radical step of removing part of her brain, Anuja's doctors wanted to make sure they had found the right target. Surgeons first exposed the surface of Anuja's brain and then attached electrodes to the suspect area. The electrodes were connected to a brainwave monitor. All they had to do now was withdraw her seizure-reducing drugs and wait.
We then went on to the next step of recording seizures with wires placed actually in the brain substance, placed through holes made in the skull, and we're able to confirm that that's where the seizures were indeed arising from.
Armed with that knowledge, surgeons in a second operation removed a piece of brain tissue the size of an orange. Amazingly, surgeons can remove quite large parts of the brain with minimal side effects. Pathologists at the Institute of Neurology in London examined the brain tissue. Sure enough, it was damaged. The DTI scan had pinpointed it with accuracy.
When we looked at the sections from Anuja's brain tissue that had been removed at surgery, what we saw using special stains was a subtle increase in a type of cell called the astrocyte in the white matter. It is possible that this scarring was responsible for the seizures.
In the 4 months since the operation, Anuja hasn't had a single seizure. Her case could offer hope to thousands like her.
This will be a useful way of pinpointing where the problem is, so surgery can be offered more quickly and with better chance of stopping the seizures.
I was living day to day while I had the epilepsy. I can now look forward to actually having a proper career. I can plan for things ahead because I know that my health is, I've been given a clean bill of health.
With her epilepsy now behind her, Anuja's back at work and leading a normal life. With a bit of time and a few more days out, she may feel at home again in her hometown.